Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Amanda, and today's webinar is Desire by Design, presented by Jean-Pierre Lacroix, RGD. As
Well, thank,
president of immersive design agency Shikatani Lacroix Design, Jean-Pierre has grown the company into one of the most respected strategic multidisciplinary design agencies in the world. A visionary design thinker, author, and speaker, Jean-Pierre maintains an unwavering focus on the latest and emerging trends. Before we begin, a few reminders. If you have any questions, please submit them using the Questions tab in the webinar control panel. Also note that questions can take a while to come through the system and are more likely to be addressed if submitted during the presentation. Questions that come through will be collected and answered at the end of the talk. We also invite you to interact with us on Twitter by tweeting during and after the broadcast using the hashtag RGDWeb. Welcome and thank you for coming, Jean-Pierre. If you're ready, I'll turn it over to you.
well, thank you very much, Amanda, and yes, I am. Thank you, and thank you for joining us during your lunchtime. You are actually the first individuals that I'll be sharing some insights on a book that is just been released in Amazon and iBook, Desire by Design, and you will find it next to a couple of smutty books, so make sure that you focus on the cover of the book and don't get confused with the other Desire books. Anyway, this book was really the nucleus of looking at, as designers, how do we help our clients migrate their brands and evolve their brands from a need to a desire? How do we elevate, and is it possible to move a brand from something that people either buy because they're forced to or need to something that they aspire to? And can we take, commoditize products and create an environment in which they become desired brands? And that was the nucleus of the book, and it actually connects with our methodology within our company that we've been applying for the last 29 years. And so I'm going to take you down a journey here of some of the highlights. We're going to be covering some content. The first thing is, what is desire? What does it stand for? How do we define it? And it's important to understand how we define it, because without that, we don't know if we've achieved it or not. Second is, there's a huge interest by our clients and by the industry to look at data and how to leverage data to predict consumer behavior. We're going to talk about debunking a lot of those insights. We're going to talk about the blink factor, which is our proprietary model for creating emotional connections in the blink of the eye. And then finally, I'm going to talk about 5 factors driving desire. And very excited about sharing those insights with you. Now, there's a lot of activity in the marketplace, and when I look at those activities, I think there's a battleground going on. There's a fight between the left and right brain. A lot of attention has been given to the promise, if you like, of technology and helping predict and understand human behavior. And there isn't a meeting or a program that we get involved in where the use of analytics, artificial intelligence is a point of contact, a point of discussion. And although that's very important, we really need to understand that what's driving that behavior, that need, is that we're seeing, it's like Moses with the parting of the ocean. We're seeing a parting of the ocean. We're seeing a huge gap being generated by industry focusing on what we call low value transactions, the use of technology to remove the friction points in the relationship between the brand and the consumer. So if you look at the banking industry, video ATMs and ATMs and in mobile and online, these are all tools, technology tools, to eliminate the friction points in the relationship, eliminate those steps that consumers put no value on. And you can see that in the automotive industry, you can see that in even people buying condos and homes. You can see these steps are being eliminated through the use of technology or new startup fintech companies that are revolutionizing through agile and Scrum processes the way consumers engage with brands. And that's great. You know, that really solves what I call a no value equation for consumers. It solves elements of that relationship that consumers don't see any value or need. But because of the focus organizations have put on that technology, there's a void. And that void is moving away from what we call high value, which is the emotional experience, the emotional connection to consumers. And I go back and look at a study by a research firm, Modesta, on the banking industry, and they clearly identified that a great customer experience is important, but it is trumped significantly by the emotional connection consumers have with brands, and that's been echoed by studies that we've done with HotSpecs and a variety of other companies. And so as companies focus on this technology, they're leaving a void for really connecting emotionally with consumers. And when you look at that emotional connection and you look at that technology, and you define that as desire, there are really three components of desire that are the bellwether if a brand has achieved that level of affinity with their consumers. The one is this highly emotional, that the brand really connects with the consumer on an emotive level. And emotions is actually a chemical reaction that happens in the consumer's brain. It's driven by dopamine and serotonin neurotoxins. These are things that drive the way our brain thinks. And dopamine really drives our focus, our attention, our memory, and thinking clearly. It's the left brain, if you like, of our behavior. And the serotonin is really what drives desire. It really talks about a sense of arousal, anxiety. It drives our mood, our impulse controls, our aggression and thinking abilities. And what brands really do well that have a high level of desire is they drive the serotonin, and their triggers, arousal, their triggers of need and aspiration that desired brands drive with consumers. The other one is that they have a high aspirational reflection of the customer's self-image. You think of Nike and Apple. It's not about technology. It's not about running and being athletic. It's about what that represents aspirationally of the consumer. They aspire to look and feel fit. They aspire to think differently and be creative. Brands who have a high desire factor have a very strong aspirational mirror reflection of where the customer wants to be in their life. And the final one, which really talks to the serotonin dimension of the emotional connection, which is the impulsive reward. Brands that have a high level of desire create a high sense of reward for customers. There's a sense of accomplishment in buying that product. There's a sense of feeling great about using the product. And those are the three key bellwether factors that identify if a brand has achieved that level of desire. And obviously there's a lot of subset factors that support that, but those are the high level three factors when you're evaluating if your brand has achieved that level of desire. And so when you look at what people desire, now we've defined what is desire, but what do they desire? There are three other factors that we need to look at. There's a sense of belonging. I wrote a book 10 years ago that really Maslow had it wrong. That actually the sense of belonging, which is the middle of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, is the doorway that allows people to aspire. And belonging is really a sense of being part of a community. If you're a Harley Davidson motorcycle owner, it's about being part of the pack. If you're an Apple, computer or product owner, it's about thinking differently. It's about being a maverick. It's about not following the trends. A sense of belonging is the ability of a brand to unite a set of consumers that share similar values. And this is really important. You look at Starbucks, all of these great brands that have a high level of desire, they all own that very strong sense of belonging. Recognition, I call it badge value, very prevalent in the liquor beer industry. You know, a beer bottle, the beer label is really a badge of a person's self-image. It's a badge of who they aspire to be and who they aspire to be with. And so recognition plays an important role. Recognizing that that given brand reflects your values, recognizing that the society at large see you associated with this brand in a positive light. And obviously the last sense of desire, what customers are craving for desire is a sense of excitement, the sense of discovery. Again, talking to those emotional needs that customers are looking for, something that's going to arouse your sense of discovery, that's going to intrigue your needs, and it's going to, give you a sense of accomplishment. So those are really why people desire design, desire. When you look at commoditized categories, you can say, yeah, desire, that's really a category attuned to cosmetics and maybe automotive. You look at a commoditized category like wireless devices, and you look here, this is a study done on the ranking of the most desired cell phone brands in the United Kingdom. You can see the desire plays an important role in how consumers select their brands. You can see Apple and Samsung, the high desirability of these products. When you compare that to Motorola, Huawei, and LG, you can see that they by far command a higher level of desire. And obviously, desire equals market share, desire equals better margin, desire equals better growth. And so desire has a financial connection to the growth of a brand. It's not just an emotional connection, it's a financial connection. So when you look at the category, we talked about Samsung and Apple, and when you start peeling that onion of what desire means, what desire really talks to is a sense of brand loyalty. Consumers who desire a given brand, or brands that have a high desire index, have a significantly higher customer loyalty. They're more apt to buy within the brand. They're more apt to stay within the brand. And today, with consumers having so much choice between the various, wireless devices, with new products coming on the market daily, that brand loyalty plays a really critical role in retaining that customer and driving growth for those brands. And if you look at Apple here, 76% loyal brand consumers versus Samsung, 58%. And these are high numbers for both brands. And that brand loyalty drives to why they're desired by, it's a key indicator of why consumers desire these brands. It's not precluded just to technology. When you look at automotive, Cadillac versus BMW, when you look at what each of these brands represent from a standpoint of quality, performance, badge value, if you like, and you say both cars are equal from a standpoint of the functional attributes associated with these two companies. But then when you look at the emotional impact these brands have, you can see how BMW is perceived as a much higher luxury brand vehicle versus Cadillac, 23% versus 2.1%. This indicates, again, that desire drives market share. It drives consumers' preference and consideration for one brand versus the other, even though all factors are equal. So this brings us back to the whole conversation, left brain, right brain. This brings us to the fact that a lot of our clients are putting a lot of emphasis on big data. That big data is a very important tool that marketers are looking at, companies are looking at, in how to effectively grow their business, to differentiate them in the marketplace. And if you look at data, there's more data that has been created in the past 2 years than ever before. and it continues to grow. It continues to provide, more and more resources as technology connects itself. And all this promise of AOT, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence and machine learning is all about this predictive behavior. All these proponents are predicting that these technologies are going to be able to serve up what consumers want in a way that will drive preference and purchase intent for these products. And sounds right. It sounds factual. I mean, they're spending something like $18 trillion in technology, or $1.8 trillion in investment in this technology. You would think that all of these smart people are right. You would think all these smart people are right until you look at the facts. When the last election happened in the US, everyone predicted that Clinton would win. Everyone predicted that it was going to be a landslide win, and they were all wrong. All that big data, all those insights were wrong. They really pointed to the wrong answer. And the reason for that is very simple. It is extremely simple. Consumers are irrational. This idea of being able to predict consumer behavior using science is false. The reality is this: consumers are irrational. And I'll give you an example beyond politics. So assume that Amazon has their AR right, and assume that they look at all the books that you've purchased in the past, and then they serve up some suggested reading, as they currently do. Depending on your mood that day, depending on how you feel, will have a greater influence on what kind of book you buy or what kind of product you buy than all of the analytics and the curated services and products that they're offering. Put that in the context of a supermarket. You may get a notice of saying, reminder of all these products that you need to buy. But it was hard to park the car, and the children are screaming, you're stressed, you've got to prepare your meal for the family, dad or mom. How that set of circumstances which are emotionally driven that set the mood will have a huge impact on what you want to buy in that supermarket, and what has been suggested to you and what you actually purchase. So mood, the emotional equity of that brand, and how you relate to that brand from an emotional side, and how you feel at that moment, play a much bigger role than what is being curated and personalized to you from a technology standpoint. And the key reason for that is most of our decisions, 90% of them, are done in subconscious. If you asked, and they were doing interviews of consumers that elected Trump after the election, and as you recall, the journalists were asking them, did you vote for? When we polled you, you said you were going to vote for Clinton, but you actually voted for Trump. What was that? Well, and the common response was, socially it was right to answer the question that I would vote for Clinton because she represented kind of the more conservative view of the marketplace. But deep down inside, I want to make America great again. Deep down inside, I feel that my demographics and my area in life and my area geographically, we've been underserved by our current politicians. And so that subconscious feeling of being underserved drove the decision. It was an emotional decision versus a rational decision. They voted, they responded to the polls rationally, and they voted emotionally. And that is how consumers buy today brands. And that's how the importance of desire is so critical in differentiating your product from the competitors. Another dimension that desire plays an important role is solving the complexity of choice. When we started designing supermarkets, there was only 30,000 products in the store. There's now 80,000 products. Consumers shop supermarkets less frequently, but they spend more time in the supermarket. How do you create that experience and solve that complexity of choice? And not only complexity of choice of where in the supermarket, but complexity of where choice of where you shop. You shop online. It was interesting. We did a huge study called Restore 4 years ago with HotSpecs, a research firm. We asked who's winning the emotional connection with consumers, online retailers or physical stores. And ironically, and actually very concerning, that actually the online retailers had a higher emotional connection with consumers than the retail stores. Obviously, that drove a lot of retailers to rethink their channel strategy. And even the channel strategies themselves with Amazon Go, they're redefining, the intersection of digital and physical, and how digital now is connected to physical in a seamless, effortless way. I visited this store in San Francisco, and it truly is an amazing experience where you can come in, pick the products, put it in the basket, and walk out with elimination of numerous steps in that relationship and creating a sense of desire for this brand because it solves not only functional needs, but it solves emotional needs of a sense of discovery and a sense of selection. So what's that opportunity? The elimination of complexity of choice. And we define that as the blink factor. 40% of all communication is visual, 80% is color and shape. And so when you look at the complexity in the marketplace today and the choices you have to make and where you need to make them, distilling your brand into a visual shorthand, plays a pivotal role in ensuring that you are the preferred brand in that consideration set. And more importantly, the doorway to your emotions is visuals and sensory experiences. And so the fact that your brand has a very strong visual connection with the consumer, and that visual connection ties to the emotional connection, and the two are interlinked, helps drive desire for your brand. Which leads me to 5 factors that drive desire. These are the 5 factors in my book that really, as brand marketers, as designers, we need to look at and take into consideration to help build. Obviously, the first one is design appeal. The fact is, consumers like well-designed products. Apple, BlackBerry, they provide the same functions, but Apple is a much cooler product. It's a much more stylish product. If you look at, for example, Method, they entered a category that was dominated by some of the largest players in the household cleaning category. And they were able to carve a significant market share through specifically the use of design, from materials, bottle shape, colors. They disrupted the entire category by communicating to customers that, using detergents, cleaning your hands can be a stylish experience. It can be a well-designed experience. And part of this stylish experience is the attention of materials, colors, shapes, textures. All of these tools available to designers to take a product that basically is a commoditized offering and make it something that people desire, that people talk about, that people feature on their counters in their homes. That's not stored in the cupboard below the sink. It's actually sitting on the counter. And to me, that is the first factor that really drives desire, and one of the factors that as designers we can take ownership of. Other examples of desire is the use of structure and things that solve that friction point, but in innovative, unique ways. Again, desire is about that sense of discovery, that sense of reward, sense of belonging, and the use of structure in design provides that badge value, that sense of belonging that you don't want to be mainstream. You don't want to be like everyone else. You want to be part of a group that respect and appreciates great design. And these are just examples of brands who built their entire platform based on being stylish and well designed. Moving to the second factor, which is creating a sense of belonging, which was the foundation of my first book. Lots of great brands. Harley Davis epitomizes that sense of belonging. The Running Room, if any of you are shop their stores or participate in their morning jogs, you know what I'm talking about. And it's a sense of feeling part of a community. It's a sense of fitting within a community, and that community becomes a reflection of your values and how you aspire to be as an individual. You know, a lot of the Harley Davidson um, owners drive on weekends. They do their Sunday drives up in the country, and these are bankers, executives, doctors, physicians. These are not, you know, motorcycle gang members. These are individual professionals, white collar workers, and they aspire for that sense of freedom. And brands that have a strong desire have a strong sense of belonging, and they own a key word. They own, in this case, the word is rebel for Harley Davidson. And so when you look at brands that have a strong desire, they actually own a key, a differentiated ownable word. Other R&B, we've all, I know I have benefited from this, I'll call, you know, traveling ecosystem where you get the best of living, you know, being in a home, but basically renting a hotel. It really talks to the need to feel comfortable, to be savvy about some great locations, and not be conformist. Airbnb customers are looking to be different, very similar. I think they share similar characteristics, persona, if you like, from Apple. Not go the, you know, try a different route, be different, travel differently, experience different things. Airbnb have done a great job. They are now the largest hotel operator in the world. Think of it, 10 years ago, they didn't exist. They've disrupted the current hotel industry because they've created a clearly defined sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging drives the desire of this brand for consumers. This is Starbucks Reserve. This is in Shanghai. This is just actually down the street from our office. And incredible experience. The only deceiving thing of this picture is the number of people. This experience, you would have 1,000 of people standing there. It remains today a lineup to get into this facility every day of the week. You know, kudos to Starbucks. They believe in the importance of creating a brand experience that's highly emotive, that really talks about the unique features of their brand, that create that cachet, that newsworthy. I bet you there's, I would venture to say there's millions and millions of pictures, selfies taken in this facility, providing free advertising, but more importantly, that sense of desire, a place where you want to share a photograph of yourself, becomes a landmark for people traveling to China, to Shanghai, far beyond the culture of the local marketplace. And so brand experience is one of these evolving tools. Other brands, Trader Joe, their packaging and their brand story, the sense of humor. You know, brand experience doesn't necessarily be limited to a physical environment. It could be an attitude, a personality that aligns to the values of the customers. They're not buying, you know, Trader Joe's beans or peas. They're really buying what that brand represents from a brand experience standpoint. Sonos, you know, speaker, headset, headphone have done a phenomenal job of creating experiences to test and try the product. You know, reinventing the way that you sell and merchandise technology for consumers. And by doing that, leveraging the brand experience as a competitive advantage at driving that sense of desire. So brand experience play a really pivotal role. Factor 4 is owning a coherent, desirable image. We did a study 5 years ago, and what we found out is the leading brands in the marketplace have the most coherent brand message, brand presentation at all the moments of truth. And Nike is one of those great brands where they have done a great job of creating that coherence, owning that one word, that brand essence, and carrying that across all of those consumer touch points, and really reinforcing what the brand stands for, and obviously providing a clear point of difference from their Adidas and Reebok and Under Armour competitors. and you look, it's not about the product, it's what the product allows the athletes and the individuals to do in their life. It really talks about the energy and the vitality of the brand and the call to action to just do it. And that brand coherent strategy has been consistent since the brand launched in the last 20 years. They've stayed focused and consistent on this message. And by being consistent and focused, built a lot of equity, provide a clear point of difference. And with that point of difference, create a strong sense of desire for consumers looking for that, buying into that experience. Factor 5, which is the last factor, is having a structured ladder towards desire. The reality is, desire isn't something that you click a switch and overnight you become a desirable brand. Even Method was on a journey to build that credibility. It wasn't just about stylish ball designs. They had a whole eco-sustainability story that really talked to the needs of millennials and baby boomers. If you look at Apple and their journey, which I have to say I was part of this journey when the first Apple came out, really they moved from a product to an experience to an ecosystem. And it's the ecosystem that is actually driving the growth of their business and driving that sense of desire. And understanding that it's a journey, that they couldn't create an ecosystem if they didn't have a series of products that interlinked and connected, and a cloud-based platform that connected all of these devices into providing a seamless platform for music, entertainment, reading. Apple wouldn't be the brand they are today. But it's having that structured ladder of transformation towards desire. If you think of Dove soap, commoditized soap category, they created desire by creating a platform for real beauty. They started at the grassroots level and then slowly built that equity across the globe. Getting advocates for the brand, getting activity at the local level, at the belonging level, and building that equity over time and providing clear differentiation for a product that really consumers perceived as being very commoditized. And there's a lot of other brands that have taken this journey where they were commoditized. They had maybe filled a need in the marketplace, but not one that was driven on the emotional side. But by having a roadmap that allows that evolution, that move towards the ultimate state, you can plan that migration and have the metrics in place that evaluate if you're on the right track. Finally, I'd like to end with, Design by Design. It's available at Amazon.com and iStore, and the printed hard copy will be out first week in August. You can follow me here on the screen if you've got any questions or further comments. And now I'll just open it up to any questions.
Thank you. And so we do have some questions for you, and note to everyone who's tuned in, questions can still be submitted using the questions tab in the webinar control panel. And so our first question for you is, you spoke about emotional connections with design. Can you suggest strategies to cater your brand for a specific audience without being subjective to your own taste?
Oh, that's called decision bias. There's a whole section on the book on that, and it's a great question. It's actually a great question as designers, because very often our clients come to a meeting and have number one, have kind of decided what the problem is, decided how to execute and solve that problem, and really we're relegated to being executors of their strategy. And so to answer that question, it comes back to asking, what are the fact-based information the client has from a customer-centric point of view that would validate or substantiate the direction they're doing. So, have they done studies on the emotional equity of the brand? If they haven't, then and understanding that more than 55% of all purchase decisions are done emotionally, in certain categories it's 100%, not having that part of the equation does two things. One, it puts you in the driver's seat in the conversation, because you have knowledge that they don't have. And number two is it reframes the biases away from a perceived solution to one that would allow you, that platform, to truly do the job you've been asked to do, which is to build that emotional connection with the consumer and drive growth and sales. That's something. The two is that even your own biases, very often, we're pressed for time. I mean, the days of having months to work on an assignment are long gone. Very often you're going to gravitate towards things that familiar to you, things that you've tried before that have been successful, and that's good and bad. I mean, clients are hiring you for your experience, and part of that experience is past performance, but it's also a liability. And so the use of image boards to look at evolution to revolution and look outside the industry and categories, we have found very effective, because again, to create desire, you have to create a strong emotional connection, and pictures are an effective tool to get to that. And so exploring image boards that challenge your current thinking, look outside the box, look outside the category to explore nuances. I look at Apple and Microsoft. They're both retailing technology, and you look at their packaging. Microsoft's packaging looks identical to Apple. If you put the two in a room without the stores, you would get confused on whose brand is who. Our role is really to go beyond the paradigms of the category, the norms of the category, and look outside the box to find those nuggets that will differentiate the brand. And those nuggets come from exploring image boards and images and benchmarks and insights from other categories.
Great. And our next question asks, do you have a favorite well-designed brand and why do you like it?
Well, it's hard, what the question should have said, do you have a favorite desired brand that's not Apple? Because, obviously I'm going to say Apple. It's a great brand. I have an Apple Watch on. I have every iPad conceivable, every size conceivable. I had the original iPod and all the subsequent sets. We have a Mac 2CI in our boardroom as a historical artifact. I would, obviously I drive a BMW. I love BMW because, they own the driving experience and it truly delivers every facet of their car. I was in Nashville speaking at a conference, and the i8 was, someone was driving the i8 and it was an electric car, but it had the sound of a roaring engine because they still wanted to capture, even though it was electric, that experience. I think A&B I love because they've created an ecosystem, a belonging experience that I can relate to, that gives me a sense of discovery and adventure and not being conformist. There's many brands that I desire because of what it represents, the value it represents. There's too many to talk about, but those are the top ones, top of mind.
Okay, great. And someone has just asked, is the consumer now in an ideological vacuum thanks to social media profiling?
Wow, that's a pretty heavy question. Yes and no. The more and this is where AI is gonna prove to be its own Achilles heel. The more you force conformity, the more we rebel conformity. That's been the benefit of Apple. The fact that Microsoft was a dominant player, and IBM on the hardware side actually allowed Apple to be counter-conformist, and it allowed a need to be met, an unmet need to be met that said, I don't want to follow everybody else. And so social media is actually going to become its own enemy. It's actually going to force people to be nonconformist by not fitting into this stereotype. Millennials today are arguing that that you have to stop stereotyping them as one cohort group, that really there are hundreds of millennium cohort groups, and you can't put them in a box. And so I think social media is actually going to work, create a kind of counterculture, counterconformist movement that's actually going to allow people to feel more like individuals. It's a journey, though.
Great. And So to wrap things up, we have someone who's just asked, could you recommend any other books, resources that you are reading or have read and recommend on this topic, desire and design, aside from your book?
There's a book called Brand Desire. I haven't read it. That was just coming across it on the weekend. That's one book that I would also look at. I just finished reading a book called Traction, and that would be worthwhile. That much more if you're a design firm owner. Traction is about the 6 factors that you should consider as you manage your design firm. Uh, and I've been running my design firm for 29 years. This firm and the previous firm for 15. It's probably one of the best written books. Um, then I read David Baker's book, Experts on Expertise. I would definitely recommend that book. I finished reading that. He is, if you don't follow David Baker, Recourse, you should be, as a design professional, the most insightful person that understands our industry. He's worked with 900 different design firms. Brilliant man, brilliant man. Definitely worth a read, the book. And then the other book would be by Blair Earns, Win Without Pitching. And that's another great book that you should read as a design professional. It's all about how to avoid the commodity trap in the design industry. That's it. I mean, I just finished reading Blue Ocean. You can tell Blue Ocean Shift, I read a lot. I read about a book a week. So those are my reading list that I would recommend highly for you to read.
Wonderful. And do you have any parting words for those who are listening?
Yeah, we're very fortunate as design professionals that we are in a pivotal position to help brands move from needs to desire. That through the 5 factors driving desire, we're uniquely positioned to help our clients make that move, and that we owe it to our clients to help them move from a commoditized category to one that differentiates them on a much deeper emotional level. But to do that, we need to be mindful and respectful that it's not just about aesthetics, that there are other factors driving desire, and also have the right tools, either neuro research or the use of research firms like HotSpecs, where we can actually clearly define the relationship the consumer has with the brands at an emotional level. And that suits us well as we move further up from executional experts to design thinkers.
Thank you so much, Jean-Pierre, for taking the time to present this content to us today and answering all of our questions. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Amanda, and thank you for spending your lunchtime listening to me here chatter.
Great. And just before we sign off, a quick reminder to everyone that RGD organizes regular free virtual events for our members. Coming up on July 12th, Dan Miller will discuss designing for stigma and how to address these types of problems to enable design solutions. And on July 17th, join RGD's info session to learn more about the benefits and process that candidates go through to get certified. So visit rgd.ca for a full list of upcoming webinars and other events. And this concludes today's webinar. Thank you all for your participation.